Is what you're living for worth Jesus dying for? I'm Dustin.
I'm Bronson.
And I'm Xander, and we're delving into, once again, Philippians 2, and we're talking about today self-preservation.
Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell notification, and also share this episode of the series with your friends and family.
This is the last part of a series, so if you missed any of them, go back and check out the Jesus versus 2021 series. You won't want to miss a single one. And we are excited to continue this journey on every weekend. We are releasing these exciting learning episodes, conversations, discussions. And so we're glad to have you here. Right before we jump in, would you like to put a smile on someone's face? We'd love to invite you to donate to help put a smile on someone's face through a free dental clinic we're putting on in our area to try to give out free dental care to hopefully over 100 people. And so we're raising $6,000 for this to hopefully be able to give out more than $40,000 worth of free dental care. And so if you'd like to put a smile on someone's face and bless somebody else, go ahead and you can donate at www.lifebridgeway.com/give. It will be the most fun thing you can possibly do with your money. All right, let's jump into our discussion. Philippians chapter 2. This whole series, we've been looking at this pivot text that says, Philippians 2:5, your attitude should be the same as that of Christ Jesus. And we've been contrasting, really, the attitude of Jesus and how he steps off the throne in heaven, jumps onto the scene in the brokenness of planet Earth, this lost situation. He goes through all this hardship. And really, Philippians 2 kind of walks through everything that Jesus gave up in order to save us. And so we're kind of looking at these attitudes of Jesus and saying, how do they relate to what we're seeing in the attitudes in our culture today here in 2021? And so let's jump into it here in the Philippians 2 verse 8, the last part of verse 8, where it says, Jesus, he humbled himself and became obedient to death, even death on a cross. Jesus chooses death. Does that sound countercultural to you in 2021? This is the opposite of what we see of self-preservation. This value of self-preservation. Jesus is not about self-preservation. He's actually about sacrificing himself, self-sacrifice. He's laying down his life. He's choosing death by his own free will, whereas the opposite is self-preservation. Where do you guys see self-preservation playing out in our culture today?
I mean, let's recall maybe it's starting around 2019 to about right now. Coronavirus, COVID, the toilet paper problem, right? The hoarding and the selling of hand sanitizer and the closing off of businesses and separations of towns and families and people dying in hospitals and of course surviving in hospitals as well. But yeah, it's just been such a polarizing time for all of us. But you can definitely see the undertones of people just trying to step on each other to survive, right? Whether it's financially, what happened in with the stock markets of people selling off their stock, knowing that it's going to come back, things like that, and knowing that they'd get even richer. The rich have gotten richer in this country after COVID, which is absolutely mind-boggling, and the poor are getting poorer. So yeah, people are definitely trying to step on each other to survive throughout this pandemic.
Self-preservation. I want to guarantee my well-being even if it's at the expense of somebody else. But really, we usually don't even take it that far mentally. We just say, I'm going to make sure that I'm good, right? I'm going to preserve my life, and I'm going to have the longest life possible. How about you, Bronson? How do you see self-preservation playing out in our culture today?
I don't know if you guys are ready to talk about this.
Bring it.
But there's no wrong or right. It's just a different aspect of things. But let me just ask you guys a question. What about guns?
Oh,
You brought it up.
what about guns?
Well, it's okay to to agree to disagree. I think the viewers want to know, like, it's okay to think differently. So I don't know. That's self-preservation. What was the question?
How do you see self-preservation?
Yeah,
So,
I feel like,
how do you see the issue of guns relating to self-preservation?
Well, I think when we look at in the Bible, it says, "Thou shalt not kill." A gun can kill, right? You're using a tool to kill, and owning a gun may say that you're ready to do that, whether it's self-defense or going on the offense or protecting your country or protecting your family, protecting your beliefs. That's great. I understand that. But you're ready to take someone else's life to preserve yours or preserve your idea or preserve your belief, right? Just to survive longer than someone else, right? So I guess that's where the conflict is.
So before you cancel Xander or become his best friend, one of the two, like, let's just make it okay to talk to recognize that a lot of these issues today reflect the value of self-preservation, no matter what side you're on. And something that, and Xander, I can speak for something I respect about you is that you're just as passionate about loving people who think differently than you are as you are about following your own convictions.
Amen.
What if everyone was like that?
Amen.
What if everyone watching this right here decided that I'm going to take the attitude of Jesus instead of the attitude of 2021? Instead of canceling people, I'm just going to love people like Jesus did and choose. And so even self-preservation, maybe that's even of our own opinions, right? We cancel any other threats to our own opinions so that we can preserve what we want. But I mean,
Can I make something clear though?
Oh, go for it, please.
I definitely don't want to even take a stance officially here.
Yeah.
I actually want to be enlightened by viewers or people that I encounter, whether they're gun owners or anti-gun, gun people, where I can learn, from it. And I was just kind of putting out almost a question there for everyone to kind of discuss, if that's even a valid question. Some people can kind of argue that if that, or on the other side of things, the Israelites essentially killing people in the name of God, right? Or taking out a whole nation or a whole people in the name of God, right? That's the other argument, and or why David would do those things. So that's hard to wrestle with. Let's just say that right now, and let's not take a stance officially here and now, but at least we can acknowledge it here at the table.
So basically, our goal is to open up as many cans of worms during this 20 minutes as we can.
And I think it's great to talk about. You know what I mean? Like it molds your thoughts and like your theories about things. And of course, it's scary to bring up, but that's why we're doing this. To talk about it.
It's okay.
Yeah.
Discussion has never killed anyone.
Yeah.
Most of the time. But you look at all these like hyper polarized issues. Many of them have self-preservation somewhere in there, and so we're not saying to be reckless with our lives, right? But many of them have, like healthcare. There's a self-preservation component, right? Big pharma. There's a self-preservation component. We talked about guns. We talked about the COVID guidelines, how to respond to that. I mean, you choose the topic. Somewhere in there, or foreign policy. Like whatever we choose, somewhere in there, there's a value of self-preservation. So I want to ask, like, why is self-preservation so important to people today?
Well, I personally think that it's because we love our own lives. It's exactly the opposite of what we're reading in Philippians 2.
Oh, man.
Philippians 2 is that we love our lives so much that we want to preserve it. Whereas Jesus loved everyone so much that he was willing to give it up for all, right? He gave up his own life unto death. So to try to preserve, I mean, I love my family, for example. I love my daughter, I love my wife, and I will try to do everything I can to protect them, right? But here's the question: do I love my family so much, right, to preserve them here on this earth and compromise my morals or the things that God has instilled in me, to preserve their life? That's a really tough thing to wrestle with. But that's why it's so prevalent in self-preservation, because the toilet paper thing, right? People are hoarding toilet paper, maybe because they're really scared. It's a big fear or whatever. But at the end of the day, it's going to meet a need for their family. And that's what they're trying to do, is preserve themselves and their family, right? So there's some good in it as well, but that's why it's difficult.
Yeah, I was just thinking about what you were saying, and man, self-preservation, like, I don't know, it can be an ugly thing, like what you mentioned. Like, I'll do whatever it takes. So I'm gonna be selfish. I'm gonna get this. I'm gonna get that. I'm gonna do greed, and we're so fixated with that our hearts and stuff then turn ugly, because we're thinking like, oh, it's okay because I am saving my family or this and that, but it's actually affecting another person because you get so greedy and you're not, real, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes sense.
No, I think what you're talking about is the concept of individualism versus a community-based understanding of life, not necessarily just your culture. We're a very individualistic society in a lot of ways. Not just by the personal level, but my family in an individual, that mine are going to survive longer than yours.
Yeah. And where's this value coming from? I mean, we touched on this in the very first Jesus versus 20 and 21 episode that we did on Jesus versus self-exaltation. But we touched on this. Where's this value of self? Why is self-preservation so important to people? You want to know where it comes from? Really? I mean, sure, like, we definitely are wired to avoid pain, right? Like, that's fair, right? But as far as a prioritized value, it comes from the secular worldview. Because think about it. If there is no better life after death, then you better live as long and as good of a life as you possibly can right now.
Right.
And so this is the environment that we're living in, and it's almost like, and so because this is kind of, we're living in a secular environment, we can oftentimes by osmosis, like, embrace some of those values and just get swept away with the culture. Just get swept away and realize that, wait a second, is living as long as I can the most important thing, or is living for something worth dying for more important? Or, let's take it a step further, am I living for something worth Jesus dying for? Because that's exactly what he did. Is Jesus chooses death on our behalf. And so I think about, you look at what really answers the heart cry. We're not throwing any secular people under the bus, because really, I believe that all humanity was created by God to desire to really value something better. Because who do we define as heroes? Is somebody a hero if they're able to obliterate everyone else in their path and be the last man standing? Is that the hero? Maybe on some kind of a twisted movie or video game, right? But like, is that answering our heart's cry? Or is a hero the one that lays down their life in order to save someone else? That's a no-brainer, right? And that comes straight from what Jesus said. Jesus said, greater love has no one than this, that he or she lay down his life for his friends, right? And that's what Jesus does, is he lays down his life. And he says, here, I'd rather you live than me. But here's what gets me about this, is whose life is more valuable, Jesus's or mine or yours. Like, this is not like an even trade. Right. Like, Jesus is like, oh yeah, you take my place and I'll just, this is not even like an even trade. Like, we're not even on the same level. He's immortal. He's God. He's undiable, right? And yet he's the all attention in the universe is on him. Like, he's the life giver. He's the resurrection of the life. And yet Jesus is saying, no, I want to lay all this down so that you can have life. For God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever believes in him will not perish, but have everlasting life. Self-preservation. Jesus says we don't have to worry about preserving our little tiny life here in the here and now, because he's got something so much better for us. And so when we live for something worth dying for, or worth him dying for, it creates a totally new meaning to life that this culture cannot give to us.
Yeah, I like the point you make. I really like the point you make where you say that if this life that we're living right now is the only thing we get, right?
Yep.
Then of course our actions are going to follow, right?
Yeah.
And we're going to try to extend that life as long as possible, even while compromising our morals or
exactly.
or what God intended for us.
Be the last man standing.
Be the last man standing, right? But when we have that paradigm shift where we say we are not of this world, but also there's so much more that we're going to enjoy, then the value of preserving your life, it's diminished in a way, not in a way where you never want to feel pain, right? You still value the struggles in life and the difficulties in life, or the loss of life here in this world. But knowing that there's something better may be the key answer to getting out of that funk of I'm just going to preserve my stuff and my things, because there's so much better. And then secondly, the idea of giving something, a piece of you, to someone else that doesn't have is gratifying, and giving someone else an ability to live a little longer rather than yourself. I think that's some way we can break out of this funk of self-preservation.
Wow, so true, so true. What is this? What do you think about in your own life when you think about self-preservation, and just has there been times where you've really had to think about what would it, if my life ended right now, what would that be like?
I know that there was a time where actually not a time, but so basically it was morning of, I think, a Thursday or a Friday. I woke up because I heard a bunch of cell phones going off, super loud, and I'm a light sleeper. And then I wake up, I look at my phone, and it says, and this was when I was living in Hawaii. I looked at my phone, and it says, missile from North Korea heading to Hawaii. And I freaked out. Like, I looked at it and I thought to myself, oh my goodness, this is it. Like, it was early in the morning, and I hear everyone's cell phone. Even in my neighbor's house, I hear the cell phone just going off. And so I go to my wife. My wife wakes up and she looks at the phone. And I remember that moment where I just thought to myself, like, I didn't even think about the money in my bank. I didn't even think about the cars, my dreams, and everything that I owned. The only thing I thought about was, this is it. I'm here with my family. I hugged them even closer and tighter, and I realized that is my priority. A priority. That's my life, my wife and my kid. And so it was a scary moment. 2 minutes later, there was a text that said, false alarm. It was a mistake. So I'm like, oh my gosh, okay. Whew, I still have my money in my bank and my car and stuff. No, I'm just joking. But like, it's crazy when you're put in that position. Like, you realize like what's important in your life, and it was a beautiful thing, and life, like, God gives life. So it's crazy. Yeah.
That's so powerful. And really, when we're confronted with those moments, it brings everything in perspective. And I've done visits with people who are on their deathbed in the hospital, and not one of them has ever told me, man, I just wish I would have made more money. Man, I wish I would have sacrificed to work a little bit harder. Man, I wish I would have gotten this one extra thing on my bucket list that I wanted to get. Nobody ever says that. They always say, if they have any regrets, they always say, I wish I would have loved my family better. And I wish I really would have given my heart completely to Jesus, either then or earlier, depending on what their timeline is. I really wish I would have gone all in with Jesus. Or I'm so glad I did, or I want to do it now, right? They realize what really matters. And so we can choose to go all in with a God. We can trust going all in with the God who is willing to go all in for us and lay down his life so that we could have what we could never get for ourselves. Let's pray together. Jesus, thank you so much for choosing death. You gave your life. You died for us. And Lord, I just think about even as you were hanging on the cross, people were screaming at you. You're in agony and pain and bleeding, and people are screaming at you. He saved others, but he can't save himself. God, that's our self-preservation. And Lord, forgive us. Forgive me. Forgive us for just embracing these values of self. And Lord, it was true. You couldn't save yourself, not because you weren't able to, but because you weren't willing to. You loved us too much to let us go. You loved us to the grave. Your love was stronger than death. And so, Lord, just thank you so much for what you've given to us. And really, us giving our lives back to you is not really that much of a contribution compared to what you've given to us, but we give them to you anyway. You can have us completely. Thank you. Amen. Well, we'd love to hear your thoughts. We've started the conversation. We'd love to let you finish it. We'd love to invite you into a Zoom discussion room right now. If you're watching live, we're going to put the meeting ID right up here on the screen, or you can go to the comments and click on the link to jump in this Zoom room just for 20 minutes, and we want to hear your thoughts. What's your experience, or what stuck out to you from the discussion or on this topic, or what's your question, or maybe you just want to jump in and listen in. We want to continue this discussion with you, and so we'd love for you to do that. If you're watching after the fact, go ahead and write it down a comment. Let us know what's your thought on this. What hits home for you, or what's your experience? We want to know. So we'd love to hear from you. So go ahead and jump in on Zoom and right now, and let's continue discussing this together: Jesus versus self-preservation.